Good morning and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 166 of 2025, and I'm continuing this story about these incredible horses. All these incredible men. Charles Howard. He was a Buick salesman. Now, in his earlier years, he had been in the military and actually had trained as a cavalryman. So he was a horseman. But seeing where things were going in the early 1900s, he became a car salesman. Was supposedly one of the best car salesmen that there ever was. Supposedly, even in the big earthquake in San Francisco, I think that was 1908, his firm, when that whole disaster struck, it had all these cars, which were then used in the rescue efforts during that incredibly devastating event. So Charles Howard, he ends up marrying, they end up having a son, Frankie, and they also, at this point in time, sometime during these years, bought this incredible ranch in Willits, California, 16,000 acres. It was a horse ranch. Basically, they had a big barn with a lot of stalls. And instead of moving horses into that barn, Charles Howard moved a bunch of his prize cars in. Machines rather than living animals. Which would you pick? Now, at this ranch, Charles Howard and his wife, they were living a very, very abundant life, a good life. And Frankie, he had everything a young person could ever want, really, as well as vehicles to drive around in at an early age. Charles and his wife went off at one point for some event for a number of days, and Charles was trying to get Frankie to go outside. Once they'd left, Frankie actually went and got his fishing gear together and jumped in a little truck and went off down the road, got in an accident and died. Charles Howard and his wife come home. Now, neither one of them fully recovered from this event, but definitely Charles's wife did not. She basically lost her ability to be in that situation. All of it reminded her too much of her loss. The two of them end up getting divorced, but Charles Howard carries now around with him this feeling of regret for having left his son back when they could have brought him along. And just the feeling of loss from losing a son. I can't imagine what that would be like, losing your child. So Charles Howard had this wound. Now, one of his friends decided to take him down on a trip. I think they went down to Mexico, just try to get Charles Howard's mind away from what he was experiencing. He met a young woman there, or a little younger than him anyway. They got along beautifully, and she was actually really into horses, which is when Charles Howard became interested in owning a racehorse. He also became acquainted with Tom Smith, who ended up being Charles Howard's horse trainer. Tom Smith is a story in and unto itself, how the two of them met, and then how Tom Smith was the one that ended up picking out Seabiscuit as a great potential racehorse. Why? Because of the spirit that Tom Smith could see lived within that horse. Not because of his accomplishments, because at that point in time, Seabiscuit basically had none. Remember, He'd been used basically to increase the esteem of other horses, increase their confidence by losing races as a training aid. Okay, we'll stop the story there and see how these characters come together to create something beautiful.